All right, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I'm John Bryan. This is Freedom is Scary, episode number 53. Thomas Jefferson said, and this is pertaining to the topic that we're going to talk about here today. In 1816, Thomas Jefferson said that enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of the day. And one of the most important things going on right now, and really the only thing that we have in our favor as people who love the Constitution and want to defend the Constitution, is the ability to communicate with each other to expose the people who are violating the Constitution, namely government tyrants, bureaucrats, politicians, and especially governors, but also police officers. The most important thing we can do, and really the only thing that we can do at this point as just the peasants that we are, is to enlighten people. Because if we don't expose what's going on out there when there are violations of the Constitution and there are injustices happening, if we don't expose that, then it's hard to complain. Of course, the government is not going to take care of their own injustices. But the people amassed together, united, or at least a large group of them, are able to do something about it. So at least while it's still possible on platforms like YouTube, really the best thing going there is the ability to communicate with each other and educate each other on not only the Constitution and what your rights are and what the best way to assert your rights are, but also to hold the government accountable. And since really I've been on YouTube, and it's been a year and a few months so far, I've just been really amazed at the power of putting something out there and what can result from it. Because when the government knows that it's out there, a lot of times it will quickly work to hold itself accountable, at least at some levels. But if it's never out there, that may not happen. Also, when things are out there, when some event is captured on video and it gets up on YouTube, the people there's public outrage about it, and other people are able to connect. So if one person has information or was a witness or knows something about a subject in the video, they can reach out. And just in videos I've been involved with, it's been amazing the kind of response that you can get from the government and also from fellow like-minded people or victims. So I'm real happy to have on here tonight a guy who's got a really successful YouTube channel, and his name's LackLuster, the name of his YouTube channel. And if you look at it, it's all about police accountability, police videos, and what's not to like about police videos. I love to watch police videos. I think a lot of people do. And now that everybody has a phone in their pocket, they're capturing all sorts of things. And now that there are body cams out there, so we're inundated with videos, and somebody's got to be able to sort them out and communicate these videos to the people, and also be able to educate them as you go. And LackLuster, that's what I've really liked about his videos. I think it's harder than it looks too. It's a lot harder than it looks, and he's really effective at presenting these videos and then also providing commentary and also educating people on what their rights are. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him on, and we'll get right to it. How you doing? Oh, I can't hear you. Are you off? I think you're muted. There you go. Try it again.
Hey.
All right. I hear you now.
Perfect.
Man, well, we already got...
my wife's running downstairs right now telling me I'm muted.
Already have 62 comments there, so it's going to be hard to keep up with any questions that are there. But before they get to ask you any questions,
sure.
let me ask you a few questions here. And we've talked a few times, and I think we first talked when you had contacted me about like the first video that I had uploaded to YouTube that
Yeah,
sort of
the
went
Putnam
viral.
County sheriffs breaking into that guy's house.
Yeah, and then you did a video on that, and so I started watching some of your other videos, and so here we are today. So I really appreciate you coming on, and kind of like a lot of other people I've heard from, look forward to sort of hearing more about you and what you do.
Yeah.
So
my pleasure, really. I think I probably started watching you before you ever heard of me. My channel was real small, and that Putnam County Sheriff's Office video was so wild. Oh my gosh, it still gets me heated.
Well, sometimes these things go pretty slow, and I was just actually on the phone today with different lawyers and different clients talking about cases that are about to be filed coming from that video. So here we're almost 2 years after that happened.
Yeah.
And you have a 2 year, well, no, not actually, a year and a half or so, but it's crazy about how long it takes really to sometimes put these cases together and talk to witnesses and, kind of negotiate with lawyers, but that's about to blow up right now. So I'm looking forward to releasing a lot of new information and hopefully making some follow-up videos, because people have been asking me, well, what's going on with that search case, that drug task force? People ask me that from like Australia,
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's coming. It's coming. You're just gonna have to be patient.
Yeah, I think people don't understand that litigation takes so long. I mean, there's an Eric Brandt case that took 7 years with Westminster. It was just recently settled, but I get hounded a lot for updates, and it's like, dude, this just happened last week. Like we're not gonna know anything until like 2025. But that's government. That's what government does.
The good thing about federal court is that it generally moves pretty quickly, at least in the federal courts of West Virginia. And usually, well, before all the COVID stuff, I mean, we'll see how many I think they've been having criminal case jury trials, but I'm not aware of them yet really having the civil case jury trials. So it's delayed some now, but it used to be about 12 to 13 months from the date that you file a federal Section 1983 case, and then you get to actual trial, because they're pretty simple.
That's not bad.
You don't have a whole. It's not really complex litigation. I mean, generally you have 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 depositions at most. You exchange some documents and photographs, whatever, and then you either make a deal or you don't make a deal, and then you have a trial. So there's not a whole lot to do. It goes pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But state courts is where that can be different. Now, state courts, these ambulance chasers basically have perfected their arts in the state court. So they get to, they'll take a whole day or two just picking the jury, because the judges will, the judges in state courts generally are elected. And so they'll give a whole bunch of leeway to the trial lawyers, because they have a big lobby, and they don't want to lose their next election by pissing off the trial lawyer lobby. I'm speaking in general terms, but the result is that when you're picking a jury, they get to basically just talk to the jury and ask them questions, the voir dire process. Whereas in federal court, like, the federal judges don't care. Like, you submit your questions to them ahead of time that you want them to ask the jury. Like, is your husband a cop, sort of thing?
Yeah.
And then they ask the questions. And so they could spend 15 minutes on it. And, that's one of the downsides of federal court. Not all of them do that, but at least it goes very quickly, and you get your decisions in writing so you can appeal if you don't like it.
Yeah.
But the media, one of my criticisms of the media is, just the basic local news is they'll show one of these videos, or they'll report on it, and you'll never hear about it again. Or, if your client gets arrested, they'll blast it out there that, this crazy headline of this really awful person got arrested. And then you go through the process and you get a not guilty after jury trial. Very, hard earned, and
they're still
completely
labeled
acquitted.
a horrible person in the public's eyes because of that headline. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they don't report on the fact that the person was found not guilty. And newspapers do that as well.
Yeah.
So I hope that YouTube sort of stays open to different points of view and doesn't continue down the road to censorship, because really that's really the best source of news that we have right now.
Well, there's actually there's a channel called YouTube Creators. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it kind of gives all the updates for what YouTube is doing for creators and the new updates to the Creator Studio and all that jazz. And today they released a video where they said that for those of you that don't know, when you upload a video, you have to go through a screening process to make sure that the video is acceptable to be monetized. And there's a violence section, and you can choose light violence, like video game, like Minecraft, killing the zombies in Minecraft. I forget what they're called. But the second section is for graphic violence from law enforcement. It's very specific for law enforcement violence. And your video will be demonetized. It will be cut off from all revenue. Today, they've released that if your video is educational, newsworthy, and something else, I can't remember the third thing, but if it includes law enforcement violence, they're opening it up to monetization. So that's a huge... I mean, when I read it or when I heard it today on this video, I screamed, yes! And my wife came down and was like, what's happening? I was like, this is good. This is good, because I've always been afraid of being deleted from social media because of my content.
Yeah, I mean, every video I put that has the least bit of violence from the police, I mean, total instant demonetization. So, I mean, is there some way around that?
Not really. I mean, my the video that I posted yesterday, submitted by a guy and through Facebook, and absolutely horrendous. You know, the police, whatever. They were terrible to this man for, in my opinion, absolutely no reason. And it was demonetized, even though I cut out as soon as they touched him to pull him out of a vehicle, and ended up breaking his elbow and, you know, damaging this person. Even though I cut out all of the violence, they still demonetized it. But apparently they're trying to turn the tide on that, I guess, and hopefully we'll be able to continue forth with that kind of content. But
yeah, I mean, they haven't harassed me a whole lot, but the last video I uploaded a video last night where I snuck in
the bump stop video.
No, I snuck in a Hitler reacts video that I created where he's reacting to masks. And they that's the first time I've been insta demonetized and haven't even had the option of monetizing it. But I'm surprised it's still up, if it is still up. But
I think it is. My wife and I watched it last night. Yeah.
Wow. Somebody was saying that it was going a little bit, the video quality was not great. And then Stephanie says, if you put the chat on slow mode, it'll help. I don't know if that has to do with video quality. I don't even know how to do that, actually, Stephanie, but hopefully the video quality improves here. But yeah, the comments just really ran away. So I sort of got sidetracked there. Sure. For the people who need more, who've never watched your channel or anything, I think I can share the screen real quick of just, the front page of your channel. So if you're on YouTube, where is it? Okay. Well, there's one of your videos I was just watching. Let me go to that. That was the one in Virginia after the Capitol protest that they visited the guy's house. I was just looking at. So this is LackLuster's channel, and it's just LackLuster. And the link is in the description, but he's got lots of great videos in there. And a lot of them have to do with police videos and, First Amendment auditing, police stops, and all sorts of all sorts of great stuff. And then I think you also go into a lot of, what's the best gear to use as far as dash cams and all that sort of thing. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, a little bit.
All right. So let me see. All right. So let me first just ask you, and I don't really know the answer to this, is how did, I know that reading your bio, you were a combat veteran, you were a firefighter for years, and this is sort of kind of what you're doing in your retirement. How did you get into, what you're doing now with these police, sort of videos?
Well, first off, I'd like to say there's a ton of people in chat like I just noticed Big Nick, South Florida Accountability. Then there's Mass Accountability and a few other auditors in the chat that I watched a lot. I mean, consumed heavily. Backtracking from there, I used to be a heavy, hardcore bootlicker. I was the guy in the comment section that used to say, just show your ID. Why wouldn't you just identify? Just get out of the car. Like, that was me. Just do the thing that they're saying to do and nothing goes wrong. And then I started watching these guys like Big Nick and Mass Accountability and James Freeman and you can name the names. And I started twisting a little bit and thinking outside of that box. And of course, I've got a military background. I was a fireman for LA City Fire, a very large department. So I worked a lot with the Los Angeles Police Department. And I was a dual function paramedic. So I saw a lot of crappy shit. Sorry, can we cuss here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'll try not to. But yeah, hardcore bootlicker, watching things that started changing my perspective. And initially I started my channel, my YouTube channel, as a gamer, and it was going very well. And just playing video games, and I started live streaming for a Chinese company. We can get into that later if you want. It's really weird, but everything was great. Everything was moving along, and I got really bored of the video game thing. And my next door neighbor was a young kid. He was dealing with dependency issues, drug dependency. And he started sending out messages saying he had a gun. He was going to kill himself. So my first instinct is, I'm going to call the cops and get him some help. And so the cops show up. I grant them access to my property. And after about 30 minutes, they geared up, riot shield or bulletproof shield. I don't really know what the shield is, but I assume it's bulletproof. Helmets, vests, everything. They go bust the door down, go arrest him. And during that 30 minutes prior to them kicking down the door, everything was very personal, polite, and we had a good communication. And right before they kicked in the door, I was filming, and the guy was like, "Get inside," and I'm like 100 meters away, and it's like, "Why?" I'm like, "No, I'm going to film this. I care about this person. That's why I called you guys out here, because I don't want to go in there without a gun, because I don't have a monopoly on the initiation of force. And that's your job to go rescue this guy." And, but anyway, he's like, go inside, go inside, go inside. And I'm, no. And we had a real negative interaction. And so I posted that to YouTube. It went viral. And then I realized, okay, I can kind of move with this, and I can kind of push with it, and hopefully make a difference. I don't know. I mean, I think I am.
I was just looking before we were talking here a little while ago to see. I looked back to see, all right, what was your first police video? And yeah. I think I saw the one that you were talking about. I hadn't seen that before. And it just went like boom, like a ton of views. And So I can bring that up if you're cool with me bringing it up on the screen so people know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to play it for sure.
So this is sort of the video that got you into this. Let's see. All right. Well, I had it up, then I started watching that other video. It's here somewhere.
It's right there under the playlists to binge watch, under police audits.
Okay. Police audits. All right, that's the one.
On the left. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to do an ad on us. But maybe you get double credit for that. I don't know.
Getting paid in construction is tough.
All right, 2 seconds.
Send a notice with level set today.
So this was September 26, 2019. The neighbor claimed to have a weapon, was going to kill himself. See,
Hey, you got a supervisor on scene? This motherfucker in here says he's going to arrest me for filming you.
So you were actually filming this one?
Yeah. That's
so it actually,
my voice.
If you don't have a supervisor,
so it came to you. It wasn't like.
And I want that motherfucker's name and.
We started like halfway in there, but so the cops show up. You have allegedly. Oh crap! What happened here?
Yeah, it's a little laggy actually. It's not showing up proper.
Oh well, I would try again in a minute here, but so you have a suicidal neighbor. Oh, jeez.
Yeah,
we're getting more ads here, and so the cops show up, and then you pull out your camera, and you had already been making YouTube videos.
Yeah, as a gamer, and the thing is I was recording for like 30 minutes before he's like, "Hey, get inside," and I was like, "I'm good, like I'm safe. I'm 1 foot in my doorway, 1 foot out on my front porch," and he's like, "If you don't get inside, I'm gonna arrest you." Like for filming on my front porch, or like, what the fuck would you be arresting me for? Sorry about language.
That's all right. I already played that video, and some of the best videos have great language, and I'm somewhat of a potty mouth myself.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad at it. I'm trying to change.
So you're on your own property filming, and then what happened? Did he end up messing with you, or taking you into custody or anything? I didn't watch the end of the video.
No, they finally got a supervisor on scene. It's actually a 4-part video at this point, so it's like, I don't know, 2 hours worth of content. But yeah, supervisor came out on scene, started talking to me, and just kind of chilled it out a little bit because I was amped, and maybe more than I should have been. But I filed an internal affairs of investigation, and he was punished. They won't say what, it was probably nothing. And then through that, I got the body cam footage and found out that CSPD, they have got these body cams that are built into their uniforms, actually. So like instead of a button right there, it's actually a lens, and that's their body cam. So in these situations where they're going to kick in somebody's door and possibly be in a shootout with some suicidal dude, they're going to vest up, put on their plate mail or whatever. And he throws their vests on, and it covers up the body cam, and there's no body cam on top of the vest. So we expose that. So there's some, I don't know, they need to change that. They haven't, but I mean, that's pretty much it.
Let's see what
he got punished. I left.
What circuit is Colorado in? Let me turn to my handy chart here.
10th.
All right, call your 10th circuit. Okay. Yeah. Has there been a right to record decision from the 10th circuit yet?
No, I don't think so.
So it was the 1st circuit, 3rd circuit.
But
5th
about a
circuit,
year,
I think, has had one.
About a year prior to my incident, there used to be a channel called News Now Colorado, and it was a younger guy, and he was filming actually about a mile away from my house at the Colorado Springs Police Department headquarters. He was filming outside, and they detained him in handcuffs in the back of a squad car for about 45 minutes, and he ended up suing for an illegal detention because it detained him for filming the police station, and won $47,000 off of it. And then that was one of the cases, along with another one, that forced CSPD to wear body cams and to instill a 10-minute First Amendment training course for all of their officers. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I just filed the a lot of people are following that family court judge search case, and that I had posted. And that was an interesting video because really it was the fact that it went on YouTube and went fairly viral on YouTube, that the judicial disciplinary authorities saw it on YouTube, and people were all pissed on YouTube and then talking about it on social media. And that was actually what started the official investigation into the judge.
Yeah,
but
good.
On another note, it also involved recording, because it was the video itself that got the attention of the authorities. And during the video, if you watch it, it cuts off. It doesn't capture anywhere near the whole event, because the judge and her bailiff deputy said, stop recording or you're going to jail. And they threatened it like 7 times.
And for those that don't know what video you're talking about, this is the one where it's a divorce, and they were dealing with the separation of goods. Am I correct?
Yeah. It was a year after the divorce, and it was just part of the divorce was like not a handwritten, I think it was typed, but there was stuff circled on it. It was just a list of just stupid stuff, little stuff, items of personal property. Wife would get this, husband would get that. And it was like DVDs and pictures and a chainsaw stuff, just stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And then a year later, she files a petition to have him held in contempt, claiming that she didn't receive all the stuff, basically. And so he gets hauled into court. He had a lawyer before, but now this is a new proceeding. Basically, he couldn't afford one at that time. He comes in by himself and he pays for it, basically. I mean, the judge, this was, as we allege, arranged ahead of time, and the hearing was just stopped. And basically the judge took on the role of a litigant and says, all right, what's your address? We're going to your house. And just sort of says, all right, we're moving the hearing to your front yard. And by the time he gets there and the judge gets there, he has his girlfriend recording video, and then he's got an audio recorder on his person. And both of those are ordered to be turned off under threat of being arrested and put in jail by an on-duty uniformed police officer, with a judge ordering him around. And my client was actually still is a federal law enforcement officer, and that's probably why he had the balls to call her on it on video. And if he hadn't have done that, it never would have been exposed. And so if you look at the case law on the right to record, and here in the Fourth Circuit, they haven't had a right to record ruling that's directly on point. They haven't held that you have a clearly established or even any constitutional right to record police. Now, this is usually in a public place, but it's, the U.S. Department of Justice has, threatened Baltimore with, the DOJ has taken the position that there's a right to record, because other circuits like the First Circuit and the Third Circuit have found it, but the Fourth Circuit hadn't yet. And Baltimore's in Maryland, which is in the Fourth Circuit. So there hadn't been a case yet in the Fourth Circuit. Maybe this could be one, because we did allege violations of the First Amendment in this case for them forcing the recordings to go off.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the case law, it says, if you read it, it says that, not necessarily, it's not like all video recordings are protected First Amendment activity, because the reasoning is this: you could be, you could just be filming something stupid like a cat video or something. And, if you didn't have some sort of artistic expression behind it, maybe it's not even protected under the First Amendment. But where you're recording public officials, government employees
in their official capacity, for
the purposes of holding them accountable, that clearly under all this case law, that is really what triggers the First Amendment. And so it's another thing to keep in mind when like all these people are recording the police. You know, the fact that you're doing it for the purpose of holding public officials accountable or ensuring that they're held accountable, or they following the law. I mean, that absolutely, as long as that fact isn't disputed, boom, it can't really be disputed very easily that the First Amendment isn't implicated.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm really hoping that it turns into something for the Fourth Circuit. And I'm curious, like, and this would be a good question for you, I guess. Is there a Supreme Court precedent that would rule over all of the, circuit courts?
No, not yet. There's going to be one. There's going to be one. And, I've taught classes for cops before, and for their supervisors, for their lawyers, on how to avoid liability in civil lawsuits. And, because they can avoid a lot of problems by crafting their policies and their training in a certain way. So a lot of things I used to say for years, haven't done a whole lot of this recently, but is, look, there hasn't been a Supreme Court case on this yet, or there hasn't been a Fourth Circuit case on this yet. Do you want your name to be on that case? If you don't want your name to be on that case, then don't arrest somebody for filming you. Yeah, because that might be your name on the next famous case, or on the most famous case that makes its way to the Supreme Court. So there has not been one at the Supreme Court. There is Supreme Court case law that has to do with First Amendment expression and videotaping generally. And I think there was an ACLU case that had to do with videotaping, but none of this was on point as far as the issue. Is there a constitutional right to record police officers in public? That has not been to the Supreme Court yet, but I think, it's going to have to, especially now.
It has to happen.
And that's probably why the Fourth Circuit, for instance, or the few circuits that haven't ruled on this, they know that if they rule in favor of the police on one of these, that could be their case with their name on it. Not their name on it, but their names in the docket anyways, that makes its way up to the Supreme Court. But the difference here in your case and in that family court case is that the individuals filming are on private property. They're on their own property. Yeah. So that's even a stronger claim. So it's really outrageous for a police officer to say, you're on your own property, but you're going to have to stop filming or else I'm going to arrest you.
Yeah. And I, it's kind of weird because I don't think he was upset with me recording per se, I do think he had a legitimate concern for my safety and was trying to push that public safety thing. But I'm also of the type of person that, like, I'm a grown ass adult. I've lived through war. I don't need you to protect me, bro. I can do that myself. We're good. I can step inside. But I don't know.
And, interesting, there's this case right now that's at the Supreme Court called Caniglia versus Strom. If you haven't been following this, it came out of the First Circuit, and they just had oral arguments at the Supreme Court like last week. And so just yesterday and today, I was taking some time to, while I'm working, while I'm eating lunch, all that, to listen to the oral arguments. They're like an hour and 20 minutes long or something like that.
Yeah.
And you'd be shocked. The issue before the court right now, before the Supreme Court, is whether they're going to create a third exception to the default base Fourth Amendment rule that a warrant is required to go in somebody's home. Because right now there's only two recognized exceptions under Supreme Court case law, very well established case law, and that's voluntary consent or exigent circumstances. That's it. Emergency.
Yeah.
Now, the law enforcement lobby the politician lobby, the big government lobby, the statist lobby is pushing this to try to get what they're calling, and it's a misnomer, the so-called community caretaking exception. That's what they're pushing for, and it's sort of part of the gun control movement because it has to do with these red flag laws.
Yeah.
So it's like your neighbor. All right, you have an allegation of somebody who's suicidal or mentally ill, mentally unstable, and they have guns. They have scary black guns. They think, all sorts of dangerous items.
Yeah.
And the police can come in without a warrant just because it's a the community caretaking function, and that's what they're trying to establish. And I would urge you to listen to. I'm going to put a link to it at my website at thecivilrightslawyer.com. But if you haven't listened to Supreme Court arguments before, this one be a good one to listen to because it might shock you. Just like some of the stupid questions that the Supreme Court justices are asking in this case.
Yeah. And
here's what they get obsessed with is they pose, I think it was Justice Roberts posed it first. He poses this hypothetical scenario. Like, okay.
And just to be clear, this is in Caniglia v. Strong, right?
Yeah, Caniglia v. Strom. Yeah, Justice Roberts says, all right, this is the lawyer arguing for, on behalf of the individual, not the government.
Mm-hmm.
He said, all right, here's my question. What about this scenario? Grandma hasn't been heard from in, however many hours. That never happens. She didn't show up to dinner with her kids. She was supposed to. And that's very unlike her. They're worried, so they call 911. The police officer shows up, knocks on the door. Grandma doesn't answer. And I'm paraphrasing here, but so the question is all right, so can that police officer enter the home at that point? He doesn't have a warrant.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not able to articulate that there's any emergency, so no exigent circumstances. So can he enter the home? Grandma may be inside and have fallen.
Well, can I ask this? Because as my previous experience as a fireman, we had a lot of these, what do you call them? Welfare check calls. And police department would roll up on scene, knock, no answer. Okay, they haven't been, this person's 72 years old. Nobody's seen them in a while. They're not answering their phone. They're not answering the door. So they'll call the fire department. And I've personally broken into dozens of houses for these welfare checks. I forgot my question. I can't remember my question.
So did you violate the Fourth Amendment?
I violate the Fourth Amendment?
You were a public employee, right? You were a firefighter?
Yeah.
EMS, medic?
So I guess under exigent circumstances, is the safety, that safety clause, because I think there's like 4 different things under exigent that can be considered exigent circumstances, and one of them is the safety or well-being of another. So does I mean, not that I even agree with it, but under legal whatever, does it still fall into it?
Well, it's a good question. And in fact, I mean, you have sitting on the Supreme Court, really academically, the smartest people in our country, the smartest legal minds, really mostly sitting on the Supreme Court. It's hard to argue with that. Their resumes are fantastic. They engage in these intellectual conversations about case law, and they can tell you, cases from however many long years ago that maybe they were even involved. I mean, so they're top of the line legal minds.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what they chose to come up with to confuse or fluster the lawyer who was arguing this case. And it's a very, very good question. And I don't know that I was prepared just listening, if I'm this guy, to answer that question appropriately. But here's what I'm thinking is I'm wanting to shout into the screen that this is already covered, sort of like you're saying, in exigent circumstances.
Yeah.
That, if there's either an exigency, aka an emergency, or there's not.
Yeah.
So they're trying to create just sort of a lower tier of emergency. That,
Yeah.
well, it's not like the things that we've held so far in the past that qualify as emergencies, but it's just sort of like an ambiguous concern or anxiety, and the theoretical possibility that grandma might be inside and she's fallen and she can't get up.
Yeah.
And should we be worried about the technicalities of the Fourth Amendment when the officer could just go inside and see and maybe save grandma's life? It's a good question, but it's got a flaw.
Yeah,
got a flaw.
A huge flaw. I'll say that 100% of the cases that I had to break into somebody's house based on a welfare check, 100% of the time there was an emergency or somebody was dead. 100% of the time. But if I'd continued with my career path, I imagine at some point I would have violated somebody's Fourth Amendment right. And I don't understand, for example, if my mother or grandmother or some family member wasn't responding and nobody'd seen them in days, I would break their fucking door down. Like, I wouldn't call the cops. I'd be the first person on scene. I don't understand why that's not the go-to rather than calling 911. But I mean, that's more of a,
and I think that's a great common sense answer to a question posed by an intellectual trying to trip you up intellectually. And that's sort of like what law school is. It's all about questions and answers. And so as a law student, you start thinking that way. It's like, all right, so he tells you that the professor tells you that this is how this case came out. And so what's supposed to happen in your mind is, as a student, all right, you have a question, but professor, what if, and you change a fact. Well, what if it was the same sort of thing, but, and then you change it a fact to make it a little more gray area. And then, so that's what you're supposed to do to learn the law through the Socratic method.
Yeah.
But here, and I think that it's easy to give a law professor answer to what the justices were asking, when your answer is, I think the correct one is that, you know what, the reason it's an intellectual hypothetical is because that's not the way it works. When you have a family that's concerned about grandma, it's the family goes and checks on grandma. Now, we could conceive of some.
There's not always a family, I think is the hard part, you know, like right now, if my whole family was killed in our house, actually, I'm going to veer from that. If somebody didn't have family or friends or you know, and it was just the neighbor that was like, hey, where's Michelle been? I haven't seen her in 3 months. What happened to her? And she didn't have any local family. I mean, then what do you do? You know, there's that nuance, I guess. But
yeah, well, so they're questioning this guy on the perfect storm of, okay, family can't check on grandma. Yeah. So they call the police. It's a natural thing to do, and they're goading this lawyer into saying, which he does say, absolutely not. The police officer can't come in. It violates the Fourth Amendment. So then they start asking him, like, well, all right, let's change the facts. How 24 hours has gone by. What about 48 hours? And so he's trying to answer the question, like, all right, well, you're changing the facts. At a certain amount of time, it's going to be enough to be in, to fit under exigent circumstances. Now,
meanwhile, grandma's been down in the basement playing Fortnite for 4 days straight, drinking Red Bulls, or now she's got her door kicked in.
Yeah, the fact is grandma might just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
But here's what they're ignoring is, all we've heard about is qualified immunity. And the justice's question, or Roberts's question to the lawyer was, all right, so this police officer can go, say he goes and checks on grandma, saves her life, then grandma can sue him under Section 1983. And that's what they're trying to get him to say. But I'm wanting to scream through the computer, no. Qualified immunity. That is where qualified immunity is supposed to be granted. So no, grandma's not going to be able to sue the officer successfully under Section 1983, even theoretically if she wanted to, for saving her life, because the officer would be granted qualified immunity, and they completely ignored that.
Yeah. So
it's a civil lawsuit. That's why they say qualified immunity. So there's no issue with grandma filing a lawsuit, but sounded like they're leaning towards creating this new exception just to avoid the situation where somebody could sue a well-meaning police officer under Section 1983 for a technical Fourth Amendment violation, even though he was just checking to see. And it's a false hypothetical, because if that's where qualified immunity is granted. And in technical Fourth Amendment cases, that would never happen.
Yeah.
And they just completely skipped over that. Now, if it was a criminal case, qualified immunity doesn't come up. So what if they go to check on grandma? I thought this would have been a good question. All right, they go to check on grandma, but grandma's got a marijuana operation in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
So now, they meant well. They were checking on her. The family asked her to, but she just actually wanted to be left alone. In fact, she was growing pot in the basement. And then now they stumbled upon it, and they're prosecuting her. And she's facing the rest of her elderly life in prison. So
can that evidence be thrown out?
Yeah,
even
is
though
it
they
going to
had
be
a
suppressed?
legal right to enter? Yeah. Huh.
But anyways, that decision hasn't been handed down yet, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. There were amicus briefs filed by the ACLU. And also by the Gun Owners of America. I mean, just sort of.
What, for red flag laws or for?
For it's just sort of strange bedfellows, I guess, in many cases. But the reason they're pushing this community caretaking exception is for the red flag laws, and I think the underlying case in Coniglia involved allegations of this guy had guns. You need to go in and get the guns so that he's going to be safe.
Yeah,
and I think that was essentially what had happened. And
let's kick down the door.
Obviously, that's not how it works.
Face so he's safe. Sorry.
Yeah, the case I was thinking of before was, let's see, looking at what other circuits had found a right to record. The Ninth Circuit did come out with a case in 1995, Fordyce versus City of Seattle. Let's see, the case I was looking for, the Seventh Circuit, ACLU versus Alvarez, 2012. That's a pretty good case. But anyways, where were we? So, what? Let me ask you this: what, you've been through so many of these videos, what's like something that sticks out to you? Like that you've learned from just going over and analyzing and commenting on all these different police videos. Like what do you think's like the most important thing that you've learned from them that you didn't know before you filmed that first video? Or you had that first interaction with your neighbor?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with either ID laws or trespassing, like the stop and identify statutes and trespassing. I know each state is different, and in fact, so my wife is fucking amazing, Jennifer Molesky. Check her out; she's goddamn gorgeous and does some awesome work. But she hosted a meetup. There's an app, and you look for things that you're interested in, and there are meetups, and you can join other people to do the things that you're interested in. She started one, and it was called Free Thinkers, Truth Seekers, something like that. And we would discuss heavy topics like abortion and the Electoral College and yada, you name it. We probably talked about it. And I was ranting about how wonderful my wife is for so long. I forgot the question.
Well, you had something about reasonable suspicion or trespassing. I
Okay.
think.
Yes.
Stop an ID or trespassing.
Yeah. So, God, I'm still lost though.
So your wife must
What
have.
was your original question? I'm so sorry.
What is the biggest? My question was, what is the what sticks out at you? And obviously, I'm putting you on the spot here, and you hadn't had a chance to think about this ahead of time. But
Sure,
say it's like I'm the Supreme Court now. I get to ask the questions.
Mm-hmm.
You've watched all these police videos. You said that they usually pertain. The biggest thing that comes up is what the rights are under the stop and ID laws or trespassing, and I think you somehow tied that to some experience your wife had with one of those.
I don't know why I did that.
She had a meetup, an app that had some sort of meetup meeting.
Yeah,
maybe she'll tell us in the comments here.
Yeah, Jennifer, tell us. And anyway, I to be honest, I can't remember why I brought her up, but I'm sure there was a reason. But one of the big things that happens to me on a daily basis is ID laws and reasonable suspicion. That's what it was. We had the ACLU actually send us out a spokesperson to do a presentation on a case that was relevant to our local area in Colorado Springs. And she came out to explain, in Colorado, if you are detained, you have to ID. If you are arrested, you have to ID. But that's not the same in every case or every state. I think who's it? David from News Now Houston, News Now Community, 3802 in Texas, you don't have to identify yourself unless you're arrested. So what is the difference between reasonable articulable suspicion and probable cause? And some of these are like you say these to the average person that either don't watch these videos or just don't care. They don't know and they don't care. And what ends up happening is what I've seen is, in my personal opinion, some of these auditors and most of the viewers here in the chat room know more about reasonable articulable suspicion, stop and identify laws, and trespassing laws and all these other laws. We know more than the law enforcement officers know, and it's like I don't know if I'm answering your question exactly, but.
Yeah, well, it's kind of my point that one of the great things about YouTube, is that people are able to educate themselves or educate each other on really what are some pretty complex laws, and it's sort of the same thing as learning in law school, because in law school you're reading the cases, and you read a case of the guy got run over by a train in the late 1800s, and then you learn about standard of care and violation of standard of care and assumption of risk, right? So there's like the case where the train sets off the dynamite, and then the guy who raises rabbits like 2 miles away, and his rabbits die, sues the train company. And is there enough connection there to establish like causation and a duty? So I mean, it's like all that stuff. But here now, YouTube 2021, you watch actual encounters that have been captured on body cam or with somebody's cell phone, and then people give commentary on it, and then sometimes you can watch the lawsuits or follow the lawsuits that sometimes happen. Sometimes people representing themselves. And so it's really, I think it has that way educated a lot of people on all sorts of different scenarios that really never happened before.
And I think there's a comment in chat from Canadian Rights Reviews. He says, Lack is trying to say that the biggest thing he has noticed is that police don't know how to do their jobs. And I think like the video I put out today was boring. Sorry, it was kind of boring. Sorry, everybody. But the thing I was trying to highlight in that video was this civilian dude looking for rocks knew the law better than the law enforcement officer. And that's insane to me that they can be charged with and sworn into enforce laws that they don't know or understand. I mean, and not just, I mean, there's a lot of nuance to a lot of different laws, but some very basic things like trespassing and identifying laws, you know, like how do you not know that as a law enforcement officer? It blows my mind.
Yeah, those really make for a lot of the funniest videos, but it is amazing. Like, as somebody who sues police officers for a living and gets to question them under oath, I've encountered many times where the cops were ignorant of what the law is, and unfortunately that's allowed. And that's really what qualified immunity is. It's
not only allowed but protected by the Supreme Court, you know, like insane.
Yeah, it's an objective standard. It's an objective standard, and people don't realize that. Lawyers don't realize it. Sometimes judges don't realize it, and a lot of times the cops don't realize it. So I don't know if you saw I have this other video, and I've litigated this case all the way through. It's at the Fourth Circuit now, but my client Michael Walker was walking through Putnam County, West Virginia. He suffered from epilepsy, so he didn't have a driver's license. So he's going coyote hunting, and he's got an AR-15 style rifle safely strapped on his back, and he's got a backpack on over that. And he's just walking to his buddy's house. They're going to go hunting. And Officer Friendly gets called by you know, the neighborhood Karen, you know, guy with a scary gun walking down the side of the road.
These are their actual names listed in the complaint too.
Yeah.
Not
So
really,
I mean, he shows up, and Michael knows the law way better than he does.
Yeah.
And so he tries to get Michael's ID so he can run a background check, and he's going to see if could be a prohibited person. Maybe he's a convicted felon, and he can get to arrest him. So Michael says, "What law have I committed, or what law have I violated," or something like that. And so it just sort of puts him, you know, he's like, wait a minute, I'm not used to people questioning my authority. Yeah. And so they start to argue, and he says, he flips out. He calls him a cocksucker 3 times. And
the cop?
Yeah.
Does?
Yeah.
Very professional.
Which you'd think you'd get in trouble for that, you know, nowadays, you know, with cancel culture and with wokeism and all that. But if it has to do with gun rights, the left, they don't care. I mean, they don't care about the cancel culture if it involves a gun. But the same thing with the federal courts, unfortunately. But yeah, he calls them all these names, and you think you'd want, you know, most of us would get in trouble for it, our jobs, if we did that.
Yeah.
And including me being self-employed, I would probably get in big trouble for doing that. Not that I would. And then he just treats them like garbage. And all along, Michael was right. And the cop was wrong, and he was saying, he's like, well, you're wrong. I do this every day. Anyone I see with a gun, I stop them, and I get their ID, and I run it to see if they're a convicted felon. And if not, I send them on their way. And I do it all the time. And when a law enforcement officer tells you to do that, you better do it, or else you can be arrested. And he's absolutely wrong.
Yeah,
he's wrong on the law.
He thinks he's right is what is so wrong with law enforcement. The fact that they think that they can violate people's rights without even knowing that they're violating people's rights is like you shouldn't be in this capacity at all. You should be done.
And then what happens though is so then the cop gets sued, and then, you know, what his lawyers say when we get in court is, well, it's an objective standard, not subjective. So even though he was ignorant of the law and he was wrong, the standard is the reasonable objective standard. And the reasonable objective police officer knows the law like Michael does, even though this guy didn't know the law. An objective officer would have. So that's the standard that's used. Yeah. And that's qualified immunity. So it's and that's the standard that's used for Section 1983 cases to establish a civil rights violation. So it does allow them to get away with ignorance of the law. Now, to the contrary, if you're a criminal defendant, as we know, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You're held to the standard. But yeah, it's important to remember everything is objective. So even though a particular police officer, maybe he's acting in bad faith and he wants to arrest you because he thinks you're having an affair with his wife, and so he's acting in bad faith. And I had this case actually happen. The court can turn around afterwards and say, well, even though that was a bad thing that he was doing, and he meant to break the law and he meant to violate civil rights, looking at it objectively, there was enough there to fit probable cause. So therefore, a lawsuit can't proceed because an objective officer could have done the same thing, but for different reasons. Yeah. And that's where qualified immunity is granted.
Which is ridiculous. I mean, imagine if it was lateraled across the board to doctors and to whatever other profession you can think of, we'd be done with malpractice. We'd be done with, you name it. It's ridiculous. And typically it seems like qualified immunity is protecting law enforcement officers on the very basic functions of their capacity as law enforcement officers, which is more than infuriating.
And I think a lot of the situations where, a police officer doesn't understand whether or not they legally could force somebody to provide their ID is, I think that has to do with the training and environment in a particular place, because they a lot of times are taught that, you when you ask for someone to give ID, they have to give it to you. And a lot of them believe that. Yeah. And to be fair, I guess sometimes in some states it can be a complicated question. Like West Virginia is not a stop and ID state, and technically, without certain facts, you could refuse to give your name even to a police officer, and you could give them a wrong name under some circumstances and get away with it, and you wouldn't technically have broken a law. The problem is that these obstruction laws are so ambiguous, and they're left so open-ended that under some circumstances, even in West Virginia where there's no stop and ID law, they can arrest you for refusing to give your name or giving an incorrect name. Like under certain circumstances, like they have a specific, like something else happened and they have a specific need to know. Yeah. And what that is I don't know, you can look at the cases, but so it can get complicated. Like there's like a serious felony occurred and they're actually investigating it, and they have a specific reason to know your name, and you don't give it to them, then, the case law sort of allows them to arrest you for obstruction technically. Yeah. So it can get complicated. And the other thing that can get complicated is the whole reasonable suspicion standard itself. And, for anyone who doesn't know, you have two things really: reasonable suspicion and probable cause. And they're very similar, but reasonable suspicion is what you need to detain somebody, to not arrest them, but to have like an investigatory detention. So that could be a traffic stop. It could be stopping a pedestrian and asking them for their ID. So all that's needed for that is reasonable suspicion. Now with a traffic stop, they always have that, so long as they come up with some, valid traffic offense they say you committed. So that it's not really an issue.
Legal traffic stop, yeah.
Bystanders is where they get tripped up, because they assume that, all right, I've stopped this person, but they haven't, because there's no traffic laws. So they have to suspect them of some other crime, and sometimes they don't realize that until it's too late. But probable cause is a different thing. That's the standard to arrest somebody, or the standard to search somebody. So it takes more evidence to consist of probable cause. But usually what we're talking about is reasonable suspicion. And so that law changes all the time, because it comes up in criminal cases, and there's thousands and thousands of criminal cases every year. So there's different case law coming out every year on what's reasonable suspicion and what's not reasonable suspicion. So it can get pretty complicated, but it does seem like a basic thing that you should know. Can you force somebody, without more facts, can you just stop some guy on the side of the road walking down the sidewalk and force them to give you their ID, or some guy in Walmart and force him to give you, his ID? And there's lots of videos where that's happened, and oops, they made a mistake.
Yeah, big time. Actually, there's a big update on the. I don't know if I'm pretty sure the chat is aware of this, but the Jack Miller case, not Texas Sheepdog. He just sent me a bunch of stuff, so we're going to go over that soon.
Yeah, I've watched. I think I've heard from him. I've seen some of his videos, or I've had other people forwarding them to me. Is that guy in North Carolina? Maybe
Texas.
All right. Yeah. Well, obviously Texas Sheepdog. Yeah, there was another guy in North Carolina that people were sending me videos of.
Huh.
The other, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time watching some of these guys' channels, but the one that really I got a kick out of was James Freeman.
Yeah.
He had this video on asking cops the same stupid questions that they ask.
Yeah. With the
I'm sure you've seen that.
He's like, "Have you been drinking?" Yeah.
Oh my God, that is hilarious, especially for
genius.
Someone like me who hadn't been following, a lot of these auditing videos. I got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
In fact, I had it up on my screen. I don't know, it might still be there. Yeah, there it is. Asking cops the same silly questions they ask us. Let me see.
Oh, damn.
Just me.
Ready.
Watching you take pictures of our parking lot. What's this about?
Is that a problem?
Yeah, this is a police law enforcement parking lot. That is a problem.
Oh,
Police law enforcement parking lot.
who are you?
I'm Detective Mike Jardine.
Oh, yeah. What are you working on?
It's a grape flavored grape.
What are you working on right now?
If you haven't watched this
Several
video,
cases.
it's
Okay.
hilarious.
Unfortunately, I think it's
You working on
choppy
something
and it's
right
not
now?
playing.
Is it? Okay.
The audio
All
is.
right, what are you working on? What are you working on?
It doesn't matter what I'm working on. I'm asking you, what are you doing here taking pictures?
Where have you been today? Have you been here all day, or have you been out and about a little bit?
Then he asks
What
him,
is this about?
"Have you been drinking?"
I'm asking the questions.
Yeah.
Where have you been?
Then the
today?
other cop comes up.
No,
Have you been?
You know
I'm
this guy?
asking
Has he been
questions.
drinking?
You're on this property. You're on this property, so you need to answer my questions.
Are you drunk?
Why?
Why are you slurring your words today? So have you been here all day, or have you been out? Have you been to the bar today at all?
Who are you?
Have you been to the bar today?
Who are you?
I'm an investigator,
Investigator for who?
investigative journalist. I investigate corrupt officials. So I'm wondering, where have you been today? Have you been here all day, or have
It's
you
got
been
to
out
be
at the bar
scary
at all?
Working
in this
on a
guy's
project.
position.
That's
Okay.
where I've been.
Okay. Have you been to the bar at all
Yeah,
today?
I think he's not quite sure what to make of this guy.
Yeah, because it's
Like,
like, oh man, like if that guy was me, which it would never be, and I've discussed this on my channel. I know that if I I have a standing desk and a stair stepper thing, so I get short every once in a while. But I know that I can't be a law enforcement officer because I would be the worst tyrant because my ego is the worst. The worst. I would be the worst. Sorry, it's the truth. But this guy, that detective that James Freeman is going after right there, I imagine he's thinking like, is this guy like FBI, like actually investigating me for some reason?
Yeah, I don't know what he looked like. Maybe he looked halfway professional or something. I honestly don't know what he looks like, but he wasn't quite sure.
Oh, James Freeman. James Freeman.
Yeah.
I think I'm pretty sure he's over 6 feet. He's a little lanky, but a big dude. Massive red beard with the mustache shaved, the Amish style. So he doesn't look like a statist, which is yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's not quite sure like if he can go hands on with this guy and have his way with him or not. And could this be an FBI agent? You know, he's not quite sure. And then I can't believe he like goes submissive and starts just answering all his questions. And you know, well, where'd you go? How much did you have to drink here? You know, and I couldn't believe this guy starts answering the questions. And it's actually probably pretty fascinating psychology wise. If you had, maybe I should have like a psychologist or something, you know, analyze this, because it's interesting just as a lawyer who questions police is like, well, what turned this guy like from, you know, ready to go full tyrant on him and make him respect his authority to all of a sudden, like he's cowering and answering questions and about, you know, what he drinks, when he drinks, when he, you know, how long he was at lunch. I was like, it's hilarious. The whole video. And then there's like a sequel. If there's a sequel of where he does the same thing to a different cop at a gas station. And it's hilarious because it's completely the opposite. This guy, the other dude, instead of a detective, the next guy he's in like tactical gear and he's got like his blacked out Ford Explorer with the cattle guard on the front. And you can see he's probably like a SWAT team guy, and you're expecting it to just, you know, really go poorly. And the guy's like a super nice guy who's and he sort of he's a good sport about it, and he plays along. And he doesn't get angry, and he answers all the questions like politely. And so James is like, all right, you know, where you going, you know, for my safety and for your safety, you know, can you put your firearm away? And the guy just kind of laughs. He's like, no, he's like, I can't do that. Then he's like, all right, well, what do you got in your car? I can't really see in there. Can I search your car? And he's like, well, yeah, I guess so. And he opens his doors, and so Freeman starts showing Freeman everything in his car, and he's like, this is my little ladder, this is my it's hilarious because the guy's this total good sport about it, and he's playing along with it. And you see the dichotomy here of two different types of cops. Yeah. You have somebody who should be a cop and somebody who shouldn't, because it's a customer service type of job. You're dealing with members of the public, and really difficult members of the public many times, all day, every day. And so why do you have somebody who's introverted or has a temper or is a hothead or just doesn't like people that goes to that sort of a job? Because it just turns out poorly because people don't like them. And then you have other people who have good personalities. They're people persons, and that's illustrated by these two different videos, and at least they're entertaining anyway. So, my two favorite auditor videos so far, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, love.
Yeah, well, I mean, what are some other channels, you know, for somebody who's just starting to watch these sorts of videos? What are some other good channels you like?
Well, I definitely grew up on, and I say grew up because I think I'm a much different person than I was a few years ago even. But James Freeman, obviously, Clash with Bao, Bay Area Transparency. I got into Big Nick, Johnny 5-0, Furry when Furry was around. Yeah, there's a ton out there. And what's really interesting, actually, Justin Pulliam, John Felix, a couple of people are mentioned. Eric Brandt, Pikes Peak, Rogue Nation. Gosh, look to chat if if you want a list, because all those channels are the ones. Those are the ones who really shaped me into who I am today and pulled me out of being a goddamn bootlicker. But yeah, Spitting Cobra. I don't know that one. Sorry, Ian.
It sounds good. I like the name.
Then Tom Zebra. Tom Zebra is one of the OGs. Actually, I think it might be one of the ones that I first watched. But But yeah, there's a ton of good channels, and in my current capacity, I've got a bunch of different ways to contact me, and man, I'm sent like 20 to 30 videos a day at this point, and a lot of the times, I would say a good 10 to 20% of the time, it's people who are like, I just started, I like this movement, I bought a GoPro, what should I do? And it's brand new people right off this, just fresh. And the movement is definitely growing, which is, really nice. I like it.
Now, do you do any of this yourself, or are you're just reviewing other people's videos?
So other than my first encounter, like right around when George Floyd died, we had a bunch of protests out here in Colorado Springs. And I went out and did a more of a Second Amendment audit than a First Amendment audit, but open carried during the George Floyd protests, when we didn't have any facts or anything, but otherwise, no, I don't get out there as much as I probably
did anything interesting happen when you did that?
A little bit of tear gas, but not at me. So no.
Yeah, I probably feel sorry for the guys who chose to try this out maybe for the first time, and they thought they'd go to the rally at the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah.
Like, all right, guys, this is my first video, and we're gonna go.
Yeah,
we're gonna go up here and see if they,
what's so interesting about that, and I'm not a Biden supporter, I'm not a Trump supporter by any means, but what's really interesting is this insurrection deal, right? And I'm not going to talk about it on my channel, but you can have it here at the Civil Rights Lawyers. Channel. It's so interesting that they're calling this an insurrection because this group of people were upset with their government so much that they invaded a federal building. What about what's happening in Seattle? I mean, they just burnt down like a federal courthouse or something 2 weeks ago. Like, why isn't that being blown up?
Yeah, I was just arguing on Facebook about this today at lunchtime, I believe. I took a couple screenshots. Maybe this was yesterday. I don't know. The days run together. But I took a couple screenshots just of local West Virginia news, TV news that popped up on my Facebook feed. And one of them was about Ohio. All right, this guy from Ohio, these are all the people from Ohio who've been charged in the insurrection, and they circled them. Yeah. So I laughed because the picture, and I took a screenshot and put it on my Facebook. The picture was of, I don't know, 19 or 20 people in one of the public areas of the Capitol, literally milling around. Like one of them has a flag and a few of them have red hats on, and clearly nobody is even moving quickly. Like cops are standing around. There's nothing happening. So I said insurrection, and I defined it like people milling around with offensive flags and hats. And yeah. It's crazy because that literally is not an insurrection. I mean, you can't commit an insurrection with flags and hats.
Yeah.
And so they have a lie that there was all these people were armed. And it's like they found like one guy with a concealed pistol who like wasn't involved in any of the violence. They found some pipe bombs like blocks away that had nothing to do with it, as it turns out. And like the only person actually killed, it's not 5 or 6 people killed. It was like one Trump supporter who was shot unarmed by the cops.
Yeah.
And I mean, and so they call this an insurrection, and it's very scary because it's sort of like it's
the way they're able to twist it into something and sell it to the public. And what I think the scariest thing about it is that so many people buy it.
Yeah, they absolutely believe it. People that watch CNN anyways. I mean, I know people, especially elderly people, if they just watch CNN and they don't do any independent research, they don't get on the internet, They literally think that there was an insurrection, like a group, like Trump sent these people to the Capitol and there was this armed insurrection and they killed like 5 police officers. Like they really believe all this stuff. And it's complete. In reality, all you had was, I mean, at most, some people engaged in a riot. So why? So if some small group, and say they've charged 300 people at most of those for trespassing, basically. Let's just even say all of them were engaged in a riot, and you have over 100,000 people at the Capitol that day. What is the math on that? I had one guy tell me, I think earlier, it was 50% of the people there were insurrectionists. All right, even if you had 300 people who were rioters, like what is that like? It's not even 1% of the crowd. I mean, it's completely taking away the actual protected First Amendment rights of the 99.98% of people who were just protesting that day on the Capitol.
And isn't that the point, though? Isn't that what they want?
Yeah, it's absolutely the point. Meanwhile, you look at these same media outlets, and then that's what I did today at lunch. It's like, all right, I'm going to search the same media outlet for 9 months ago. It's like May, June, July of 2020, and search for peaceful protests, and you see articles about mostly peaceful protests. All right, and they don't just say protest in any of those articles. It's peaceful protest, peaceful protest, peaceful protest, peaceful protest. A peaceful protest turned deadly after a small group of outside extremists did X, Y, and Z. So they go out of their way to say that, look, everyone who was there was a peaceful protester, and they're doing good and honorable things, but there was just this small group of criminals that did something bad, but it doesn't have anything to do with them. And at best, they call it a mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah.
And yet at the Capitol, it literally was a overwhelmingly mostly peaceful protest. And I know because I've representing some people who were there, and they didn't even see what had happened. You know, they heard about it. I mean, there were so many people there, and it was spread out like over several miles. Like they didn't even know. They were still like, they got on the bus to go home, and they're like, yeah, that was fun. You know, I can't wait to. We need to do some more political events, more protests. Like they had a great time. Yeah. And they had no idea that this stuff had transpired because they hadn't seen the media. But everyone else at home, they're seeing these same videos of windows being broken and all this stuff. But if you look at a lot of what's really being suppressed, like some of my clients' videos, you can see one of my clients, the first one that really was charged all over the news, he was live streaming what was happening, and you see the doors open and he walks in. No one broke down the doors. They opened, and he just walked in an open door. And the first thing that happened, there's a Capitol police officer who gives him a fist bump.
Yeah.
So if you see that, what are you to think? You know, did the police open the doors and let him in?
Yeah.
I mean, heck,
there was absolutely a welcoming party.
And now they're going after, I did a video on them going after the Oath Keepers. And after that, I talked to their lawyer and learned a whole lot more about them. That at a lot of these real riots across the country in 2020, these guys, these members of the Oath Keepers, were going to a lot of these things, and sort of like it was their mission to protect people. Like if there was violence, they had medics, they had the gear, and so they were kind of organized, like protecting people. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, and that's sort of what they were doing on January 6th, but now it's being used against them.
Yeah. And I think because here's my opinion on that. Actually let's fact check me first. They were at the Charlottesville thing, right? Where the guy
I think that's right.
I think that's where they like first got big publicity, and so the SPLC and all these other hate groups labeled them as white supremacist, whatever they labeled them. Sorry, I'm going to sit down now. I've been standing this whole time. I'm going to sit.
Yeah, I think they were, and there were all sorts of groups of different people from different types of groups at that Charlottesville deal.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's true. The media, that was like their first round of this. Well, no, there was only two groups there. There can only be two groups. There are the peaceful protesters who are fighting systematic racism, and then you had all white supremacists. Well, in reality, like we all know, if we're being honest, there's like 4 actual white supremacists in the entire country. Like I saw more white supremacists at the Warped Tour 1997, that were in the mosh pit, that I've ever seen in all the 30 years or 25 years since then. I've never really seen any white supremacists. I grew up in the Deep South, and I think it's a complete myth. It really is. Now, are there some, maybe a small handful, that show up and try to be obnoxious? Yeah, but
sure,
probably. But then you had all sorts of other groups, like these guys who were retired military or whatever, who felt that they were still serving by protecting people or holding public officials accountable and all that. And now they've been given this Reichstag fire tragedy that they're going to capitalize on by turning all those people that they disagree with into domestic terrorists or white nationalists or white supremacists. And unfortunately, so many people think that's the case. They believe it because they still believe they still believe what they see on the news, and it's it's dangerous.
And the whole thing with the news is what's the saying? If it bleeds, it leads, right? So white supremacy, or the issue of white supremacy, or whatever, Black Lives Matter, all of these different things are inflammatory, and they cause drastic emotion in a large amount of people. But that's not the problem. I don't understand why people don't see that these little things, these things are not the problem. The state is the problem. Like, the state is the only problem that we're faced up against. But
Billy, let me respond to him.
Sure.
And these are, I think, one of the things that I'd like to be able to do in some of my videos, some of my content, is to educate people on not just what the law is, but also the foundations of it. The history behind it, the history of our country. So this is the basic 1619 movement fallacy, and that's exactly what it is. That America is this racist country built on white supremacy, and that is a red herring. That's a red herring to really engage in racism today in 2021. So racism against white people. And that's exactly what's happening. Even a city near me in West Virginia, they're having these, COVID vaccinations or testing, for all 9, or just for non-white people, or they're having, there's all sorts of stuff coming out now with reparations and all that. And they substantiate it by what this guy's saying of, well, our country was built on the backs of slavery and white supremacy. But here's the problem with that, is they're judging, our colonial era, as if it was 2021. So if we go back just to the time we were colonies, the time of our founding, it's like, where else in the world are we to look to? Is there any legitimate country anywhere in the world at that time? So the greatest power in the world was the British Empire, and we were part of that. Well, they're the ones who brought the slaves to North America, and even more slaves to the Caribbean and Central America, South America. There was actually a minority of slaves that were brought to North America, but they were pretty much post 1650, all brought by the English by corporations, just for profit. And England did not outlaw slavery until the 1840s. So, after we became a country, England was still engaging in the slave business. Now, why isn't England, the Queen of England, all you hear about is all this Meghan Markle crap. Why aren't we hearing how England is built on white supremacy and slavery and all this? Because what it is, it's all about tearing down America, anti-Americanism, because there's nowhere else, even at the time of our founding, that was more free than we were. And the English created us with slavery. And we didn't even have an option of getting rid of it in certain colonies like Virginia. Now, our second president, John Adams, from Massachusetts, owned 0 slaves, was against slavery. He was our second president. He was one of our founding fathers. So we were a mix, a coalition of different colonies. I mean, there was never going to be, all right, we're going to have slaves, we're not going to have slaves. You had to get all these different colonies to agree in the hopes of fighting off the greatest military power that the world had ever seen. So anyone who's a serious historian or student of history knows this, but they use slavery in real history and they warp it to use it to fit their 2021 political goals of, equity. They call it equity. Anytime you see equity now on TV and all this woke corporate stuff, equity, all that means is racism against white people. I mean, really it is. And you can't say anything, you can't even object to it. If you're white anyway, you can't say anything about it, or now you're a white nationalist, white supremacist. And I can sort of object to it because I'm self-employed and they can't get me fired. But anyone else, they'll send the mob after their employer. You cannot dissent from their policy goals. And if you do, they will cancel you. And it's really scary. It's really scary to see what's happening. And, so, I mean, there's going to be, as long as they don't censor me or put me in permanent timeout for bringing up some of these things, I mean, those are going to be the civil rights issues moving forward, I think. And there's going to need to be another civil rights movement, just like what happened with blacks in the 1960s, 1970s, and on. So we're just sort of repeating history there as if we didn't learn from the problems in the past. And
the pendulum swings,
Yeah, Toby, I'm trying to keep it some of the comments because I'm self-employed, I'm free. And, that is the sad, I'm not completely free. I mean, hell, I've had people, they can still file bar complaints on me. And I did have somebody file a bar complaint against me the other day for being rude to him. He wasn't even a client. I was just, and I was only rude after he was rude to me. And so I think they nicely said, well, look, we can't force Mr. Bryan to be nice. He's supposed to, but we can't force him to be nice. But yeah, when I dared represent anybody that was at the Capitol, even if I believe that they didn't do anything wrong and they were engaging in their First Amendment rights.
Just the fact that they were there, they were wrong.
Yeah. And I'm literally defending the First Amendment. And not just in my mind, but in literally, in reality, defending the First Amendment for people that they would put in jail just for being a mile away from the Capitol and supporting Trump. And that there's a big portion of our country that if somebody was at a mile away from the Capitol, say they're at the Washington Monument, didn't go anywhere near the Capitol, just because they were at the Washington Monument that day, and they supported Trump, they would like to see them in prison. There's a lot of people like that. That's how much hate is out there. And they don't care about the First Amendment when it applies to somebody who supports a political candidate that they disagree with. And it's a dangerous time, I think. And so I'm literally defending the First Amendment, and they're trying to cancel me in any way they can, and they can't get me fired. So they're sending me hate mail. It's the first time. You sort of make enemies for a living doing what I do, more so in the past than now, because it seems like it's the cool thing to do to sue cops now, whereas before it sort of blacklisted me because it was very unpopular to do. So I would get all sorts of new enemies. But now with this Capitol thing, I'm getting literal hate mail, physical hate mail with like designs and stuff from like Colorado or California. Then random voicemails with them, cursing me out, calling my staff and trying to curse them out. Just hateful, nasty people. It's crazy that's the point they don't even want you. Not only are you not allowed to have your own opinion or have your own political opinions or protest, but you're not allowed to even have a lawyer. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. I get a ton of hate mail.
Do you really do like the cops send you hate mail or?
I don't know if it's necessarily cops. Actually, here we go. Let me share my screen real quick. This one. I don't know if it's sharing. Is it?
I see it. Maybe I have to put it up.
Hold. Yeah, I get tons of really good stuff. So some of it is constructive criticism combined with hate mail, but yeah, I mean, just on the daily.
Yeah, that's pretty. I don't actually get a whole lot from YouTube. Well, of course, I don't have. I mean, I don't have
Most of mine
near
actually
the following YouTube
from Facebook. Surprisingly, it's so weird. I just don't get it. Like, this person wants me to go after members of Congress instead of police. It's like, sure, but that's just not my channel.
I do get some really bizarre, I do get some bizarre emails that do come in from YouTube with, with a lot of, I get a lot of weird, a lot of the weird, like the pedophile ring, some of the conspiracy theory stuff, some of the sovereign citizen stuff, and I don't have, I think it's fascinating, but I don't really have the time to look into it. But I get some crazy stuff as well, but nothing like the Capitol. I mean, hell, that's just been nuts.
It's wild.
Let me ask you real quick. We're running out of time here.
Sure.
But
we can maybe even take some questions from the audience too, if you want to end with that too. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let me get my question first, and I'll look for some others, because while I have you on the screen here, as somebody who also likes to make YouTube videos, I've learned a lot. It's a lot more difficult than it looks to make a YouTube video that actually gets a lot of views. Mm-hmm. And I think I've learned some lessons about what people will watch and what they're not interested in watching. Yeah. And about attention spans and things like that. And this is sort of different with like an hour or more live video. Obviously it's a different sort of genre, I guess, of YouTube. But for like a lot of the videos that you're doing, these are, you got to be able to hold people's attention and keep their interest. I mean, what is like, just like, what's one thing that you learned that now, as far as producing these YouTube videos, that has allowed you to be more effective in communicating that you really didn't know beforehand? And I know you had a lot of experience before you even got the police videos, but what's like just one like solid piece of advice for making YouTube videos? Like, what about, all right, time wise, video length? I know it's dependent on the video, but like, is there a certain amount of like minute long video that's just too short? Is there where's the cutoff? Something's too long.
I don't. Well, okay. I don't think too short is a problem, which is why TikTok and the new YouTube Shorts platform is, doing so well. I think too long might be an issue. If you're an auditor out there, one of the things that I do personally for my videos, I get submitted videos all the time that are 40 minutes long, and there's really only 5 minutes of an interaction, so cutting it down and explaining what's going on and then fast forwarding to what happened, getting the important information out there first, and then actually showing the interaction, explaining the interaction, closing it out. I do think people have especially today, with with the MTV style editing, where every 2 seconds there's a scene change. And I think to be able to hold people's attention, it has to be quick, direct, to the point. And I'm okay with that, actually. I think people trash talk it a lot and say that our youth's attention span is too small and whatnot. And I agree to a point, but I also think that it paves a path for us to create new and better things generally.
Well,
General answer.
I'm a trial lawyer, really. I'm not an appellate lawyer or a paper pusher or a law professor or an intellectual in any way. I'm sort of the knuckle dragger of the legal world, or at least I have been in the past, of like questioning witnesses in front of juries. And that's what I've trained to do. And there's certain ways you do that, and there's certain ways you don't do that. And, there are rules that you follow, and you never ask a question you don't know the answer to. You never sit down on a sustained objection. You always have a theme. Your opening argument, you have it memorized because you can memorize it because nothing happened before then. Yeah. And it has to be effective and follow a certain pattern that works, is kind of with your training. And then your closing depends on what happens. So it's all about communication and being very careful, but also to the point, and speaking not in fancy language or fancy words, but in just regular, the way people talk, with very precise and simple language, just very to the point. So that's what I had always trained on. And then when it comes to like discussing the law on YouTube or explaining something, that's really an entirely different concept that was foreign to me, because you can just sit there and ramble on, or you can go and you don't realize it.
Yeah, and you could go for 40 days trying to explain a specific law and how it applies to your natural day in your life. But realistically, what's the point? Let's get to it. Let's guide the audience, I guess. I don't know.
So one thing that you can do, I noticed that I can do in just a video that I create that's not live, like I can think about beforehand, what am I going to say, and get to the point and be just more, pretty effective, just short and sweet. And, that's not easy to do. There's an art to that. And one of the things I like about your videos is, you do that very well, that you are direct, right to the point, and you go quickly. You don't talk real slow. There's not a whole lot of empty space or ums or anything. Like, you just get right through it. And that obviously holds people's attention, and it conveys what needs to be conveyed to them. And also like gets them like riled up based on the facts of that you're conveying to them. It's very fascinating to do you use a teleprompter? Do you memorize what you're saying, or do you cut it up a lot, or?
No, and this might be boring to a lot of people that haven't been in film or audio, but my typical day, and this is just about every day, I script every video. Every word that I say in my video has been written down first, and I have really good audio equipment and audio editing software, and I speak what I wrote down after doing hours worth of research and hours worth of typing it up, and then I spend an hour or two working on the audio to make sure that it's crisp and there's no, like, you can't hear the spit bubbles in my mouth and stuff like that.
It's a lot more work than it looks like. I know that. I know that. Just for me, like, mine are super non-technical, and some of them I just make on my phone with like just the phone apps. But to really do it right, I can see that you really have to put time into it, and especially just what am I going to say? That's to the point. It really a lot. It's like kind of like trying a case. The more time you put into preparation, the more effective it's going to be. The more it's going to hold people's attention and convey, what you're trying to convey. So it's just one of the things that fascinates me. Like, some of the channels I watch are more just sort of that I've watched are, just less effective at communicating. But it seems like yours and some others are like just to the point, like almost like you focus grouped it. So
yeah. Well, I imagine I would have been a pretty good lawyer, and I also imagine to be a good lawyer, you have to be a good storyteller, and to be a good storyteller, you have to research and understand more than what you're even conveying to the audience.
That's absolutely right. That's what trying cases is about. And it's, I do miss it because cases haven't been going to trial in the past year. And unfortunately, the more successful you are in the sort of law I do, and civil rights lawsuits or any kind of civil lawsuits, the more successful you are, the less cases you end up trying, because the defense starts to settle, and they just give you more respect, and they know where this thing's going, so they start settling cases. Whereas they're not testing you out like maybe earlier in your career. The other thing is,
what is it, like 95% of cases get settled, something crazy like that?
Yeah, probably. I don't, they always say that, but I mean, out of all the civil rights cases that I've ever litigated, civil lawsuits, I can count on one hand the amount that have gone to jury trial. So that's almost all the cases settle. The ones that end up going to trial, consequently, they're either really good or really bad, meaning hard to prove. So a lot of the cases I've had go to trial have been the tough ones, and that's why they're trying them. Otherwise, they'll throw enough money at them usually to make them go away.
Yeah,
that's civil litigation. So you end up not. It's pretty rare for civil cases to go to trial. Criminal cases, on the other hand, for a young lawyer who wants to get trial experience, those are the trenches. That's where you learn the trade. Is in criminal cases. They go to trial. They go to trial all the time.
Yeah.
And so that's usually that's what's that's what's happening in courtrooms around the country. Very, very seldom civil trials. Like, I tried a excessive force 1983 case in Parkersburg, West Virginia back in like 2013, 2014. And it was like the last case. They had to close that federal courthouse down after that because there just wasn't enough business for it, I guess. But they hadn't had a trial there in years, a civil trial in years.
Yeah.
And then I tried another 1983 case at a huge federal courthouse in our capital in Charleston, massive federal courthouse. And all the judges, law clerks were watching the trial, watching the jury trial. And it was the first one that they had seen, civil. And really criminal, because federal cases all plead. So they'd been there for some of them several years, and they hadn't seen a real trial yet. So that's how rare it was that these things go to trial. So every once in a while I get itchy. Like I need to have a trial, because it's not like riding a bike. If you don't do it, you lose their perishable skills. You lose you lose that edge of questioning witnesses and all that. So yeah, I'm not sure where we were going with that, but that's like being a trial lawyer in a nutshell.
Well, it's something I'll never.
Let me look. Any good questions here? I know we've got umpteen zillion comments, but before I have to run home before I get in trouble, sometimes I get too late. Let me look for some good questions. If you see a question here that you want to answer, just chime in, but let me scroll through them real quick here.
Sure, of course. Yeah, throw your questions in chat if you got some.
Yeah, I know I saw some good questions earlier, but there's no good way in the software to tag it. Let's see. I just noticed Jeremy Childress, like he's talking to someone after a long day. That's because I literally am talking to someone.
He
after
has had a long day. We talked earlier. He was at work.
Yeah. If I didn't have a day, I could have some great YouTube content if I didn't have to earn a living at a day job.
Yeah.
But as it is, I'm lucky to find time at night. But yeah, it's after a long day.
I think you do a great job. I'm a big fan.
Well, I appreciate it. I sort of stumbled into it, and with everything that's going on in the world, I realized the value of just there being some public dialogue about constitutional rights, because the government's not going to teach you, and then the government schools are not going to teach you. And not that I know it. I mean, I'm not a law professor. I'm not an intellectual. Like I said, I'm not a paper pusher. I have to relearn everything every time something different walks in the door. Like, all right, I knew that at one time. Things change, and I forget. It can only fit so much in my head. So I'm constantly going back and relearning things. I'm not an intellectual or an academic even by any stretch of the imagination, but I have had a unique experience in some of the things that I've done, because I have been in the trenches. I've tried first-degree murder trials. I've tried rape trials. I've tried excessive force trials. I've tried search and seizure trials. I've had a lot of different experience that other lawyers, I mean, they're usually in some sort of specific category, and I've had both criminal defense and civil rights stuff. So, I have a lot of different war stories that I like to bring up, or sort of apply to what's going on in the world.
It's nice to have that kind of experience. Jennifer Molesky, whoop, whoop. That's my wife, by the way. She donated, but somebody was asking, where was it? Oh, in general, how much time do I put into my videos?
That's a good question.
I would say
a lot.
Typically a minimum of 6 hours. Sometimes it can go for 12, but most of the time about 6 to 8 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, that beats me out. That beats me out by a lot.
It's mostly research, realistically. About 30 minutes to an hour of audio editing, and then the rest is everything else.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say earlier is people don't realize that when you see a lawyer trying a case in a jury trial, like, they have no idea how much, like, for every hour for a trial, there's like 100 hours of preparation. That's why it's so expensive to hire a lawyer to try a case, like a criminal case. Like, how much money do you have?
Yeah.
If you want to do it right, for say every hour in court, you better have 100 hours of preparation.
Whoa.
That's what it takes. So, I mean, you charge $200, $300, $400 an hour is the going rate, depending on how good of a lawyer you want. I mean, you don't have enough money. You just don't have enough money.
Yeah.
If the government comes after you. Let's see. Here's a question for me, I guess. Have you ever had a client refuse to settle a case so they could set a case precedent?
I love
that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I have this conversation at the beginning, at day one. Like, look, if they come to the table, all I can do, I can't fire the person. I can't put them in prison. All I can do is get money. That is the mechanism Congress gave to me to right these civil rights wrongs in federal court. Money damages. So if they offer a fair amount of money, I don't want to take this case if you're not going to consider that. If you're not going to, in good faith, accept what you think is fair when it comes time to settle. I don't want to take the case on and with my own time and money invested. If you just want to have a trial just because you want to have a trial, that's fine. If you want to do that, you can pay me by the hour and I'll do it. So that conversation should take place ahead of time. I've definitely had people that want to do that and have paid me to do it. And we've done it. We've gone through the process. And I've had people spring that on me as well. And I don't like that, because in the end, I have bills to pay. I have employees who have bills to pay as well. So in the end, if they pay up, then that is a win in this type of a case. And most cases do settle. And the trials are hard. Trials are hard too. And these set precedent as well, because then it goes out in the newspapers a lot of time, like so and so, they settled this case for such and such amount of money, stuff like that. Like, that doesn't go away. And if you try the case, sometimes maybe you lose, and then that's the precedent is, well, they got away with this. So let's see. Any other questions? While I've got them on here, now's your chance.
Larry Butler is asking about a video somebody put up. That 5-year-old. Have you seen that video? The 5-year-old that I guess it. I haven't watched the entire thing. I've watched snippets, but it appears as though the kid ran away from school, and police showed up on scene and handcuffed him, threw him in the back of the car, and like screamed in his face.
I don't know if it's the same one. I did a video, I don't know, maybe been 6 months ago or more, of I think a 6-year-old being handcuffed at school. And, this must be a different one.
Yeah, this one just came out.
No, I haven't seen this one.
I think it's one of the most disgusting videos I've seen. But no.
Yeah, somebody said here.
Sorry,
I can't remember. Yeah, lawyer talks too much. Let LackLuster talk more. Absolutely, that's what my wife tells me every time I have a guest on. She's like, he was very interesting. You just need to shut up, talk less, and let them talk. I wanted to hear what they had to say.
It's your channel. You're the lawyer. I'm the lame guy that goes like, "What's trespassing law?" And
no, I ramble all the time. It can listen to me ramble all the time. There was a good question I wanted to see answer. Where'd it go? About like what's the worst video that you? Yeah, what's the video that made you the most disgusted? That's a good way of asking that question.
I know this guy too. I've seen him comment before. I don't know. You know what? I don't know. I can't answer that honestly on the spot. But there's a very recent video from LAPD, and they conducted a traffic stop. And obviously, the guy that they conducted the traffic stop on is a garbage human, right? We'll put it out there. He's a garbage human. He's parked illegally in like a parking lot, but they pull up and they're like, "Hey, license." And the guy goes to run, and the cop, there's one cop at the driver's window, one cop like at the passenger side at the front of the vehicle. And as he's driving away, the cop pops, I don't know, 7 to 8 shots into the car. There's traffic. It's Los Angeles. There's nowhere in Los Angeles where the streets aren't just congested, and shoots in. I mean, basically into traffic at this guy, and he was never in harm's way, and attempts to kill this man. Luckily, he got away, but I don't know. That amps me up. That was recent.
That's sort of like that. I think was it the Dorn case out in California where there was like that. I think he was a cop who was killing people, and finally they were looking for him everywhere, and they were like seeing his ghosts, and it was like LAPD maybe, or maybe it was somewhere else, but it was California. They shot up like 2 ladies in a Tacoma, and it was like bullet holes all over in it. Fortunately, like they were okay. But it just goes to show you that it was like the same color maybe as Dorn's vehicle, but it looked nothing like it. It was scary.
Oh, wait, Dorn? Are you talking about Christopher Dorn?
Was that the guy who like went crazy in California?
He was an officer, exposed a bunch of corruption, wrote a manifesto, and then burned him.
Yeah. Look at the 2 ladies in I think it was a Toyota Tacoma truck that looked nothing like what they were looking for. They like had an APB out, and whether it was LAPD or wherever, they shot up this vehicle. It looked like something. It looked like Bonnie and Clyde. It was just shot up, and it was absolutely the wrong. It was a misidentification. It was ridiculous. But the worst video I'll just throw in there that I've seen is not on YouTube that I know of, and it was the similar sort of thing. A lot of people get shot by police when they're behind the wheel of their car, because they're allegedly about to use their car as a deadly weapon and run over a police officer. And the worst video that I think I've seen is where that was the scenario, and the cops had surrounded this car, which is just bad tactics. And they revved the engine or something like that. And then the first cop started shooting, and then they all started shooting, and they ended up not just killing the guy, but like shooting the woman that was in the car, and they shot another cop to death there in this video because they were shooting each other. And that's probably the most disturbing one that I've seen. But I don't know. That would be tough to say because there's others, including a lot of them that haven't been publicly available. There was a question here also that I thought was interesting, and we're going to have to cut it off, I think, after this. But I've definitely enjoyed this. I think people have as well who are interested in this topic. But JT Marina, this caught my eye. And I've had this question as well. Again, I haven't been part of the auditor community or anything like that. But this is what other people are concerned about. Like that. This is what they say. It's like, well, don't you think these guys are just being jerks or they deserved it? Because some of these guys, like James Freeman, when he was, he was kind of goading that detective, like, we drinking, he was getting them going. And I think the theory behind this is, you see what cops shouldn't be cops by seeing if they get riled up, sort of thing. What are your thoughts on those sorts of auditor videos where people are antagonistic and provocative?
I love it. And I've answered this question quite a bit. I know that there is a wide variety of auditors. There are the very docile and exploratory and very kind and everything, and that's great. Staying within the law and being polite and concise with their word, with their conversation. All of that is wonderful. I love that, right? But the cop's job is probably, realistically, I don't want to ever freaking do that job. They need to experience the worst of the worst that we have as a people to offer them, right? So when they encounter auditors who are, fuck you, middle finger to the face, eat a dick, suck, whatever you can think of, I think they have to experience that, because if they don't, they won't know how to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So I love the fact that there are auditors on such a wide spectrum, from good to aggressive. The whole point of an audit is to test the boundary, right? Like if the IRS was going to audit your company, they're going to look through everything. The whole point of a First Amendment audit is to expose them to everything, to see if they can handle it and to uphold the law and not be fucking tyrants just because somebody did that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's better to find it out when it's somebody who's volunteering to test it out.
Yeah.
And not just some innocent person who just happens to get pulled over by this guy on a bad day.
Yeah.
Anyways, I see.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, hey, John Crump, appreciate it. I want you to come back on too. He's from the Gun Owners of America.
Hell yes.
But I've had him on as a guest. He's a really informed source on Second Amendment stuff.
Good. I love it. Maybe I should talk to him about my thing. But the last thing I saw, Save the Humans. I know you asked me a question about NNSF RC hand sanitizer event. I don't know anything about it. Email me. That's it.
Well, I better head home, and I'm sure you probably are home, but
I am home.
And I know what's going to happen if I don't hurry up and get home. I promised to be home by
8:30
or leave by 8. I don't have far to go. I could technically ride a 4-wheeler to work, but or walk, I suppose. But anyways, I'd love to have you on again, and
please. And
it was hell. We could sit here and talk for hours, as far as I'm concerned. But there is, there's just a lot to talk about. We have a lot of topics in common here, but definitely, hopefully do it again. And appreciate you coming on. Keep up the good work, and we'll if you see any good videos from West Virginia, anyways that I can handle, send them my way, please.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead.
Thanks for having me on, man. I really enjoyed this. And thank you everybody for joining us.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for watching. And I will go ahead and sign off as well. And again, this is, let me leave you with this Thomas Jefferson quote again, in case you didn't see it at the beginning. Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of the day. And that's what I think needs to happen, is people need to be enlightened by accountability, the accountability of video. So it needs to be out there and uncensored. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate LackLuster coming on, and make sure you subscribe to, I'm sure you have, if you're watching this. He has way more subscribers than I do, but if you haven't subscribed and followed his stuff, it's very, very well done, and I know you'll enjoy it. So until next time, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you again, at least here next Monday evening at 6:30 Eastern.